So welcome everybody to today's event. So glad to see you all here. And as I mentioned, we're going to explore the wins, challenges, and how we can build a sustainable career. So what we're going to talk about, we're going to do a little discovery. We're going to address any questions. We're going to share advice and resources. I really want to hear from you guys. I'd love to know what's working in your career as a creative, as a musician, as an artist, and what's not working. So a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to ask questions in the chat. Please keep your microphones on mute while a speaker is talking. And if you have a question that is going to require a longer answer, please feel free to email us at hello@charynharris.com. And then what I'm hoping at the end is that we can dive into a deeper conversation. So let's go ahead. So my name is Charyn Harris. A little bit about me. I trained as a musician. I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston and started playing music at a very, very young age. And I went on to work as a keyboardist, a nonprofit arts educator, building out a program here in Los Angeles and partnered with Berklee College of Music. And I currently handle artist logistics and tour management for the iconic Macy Gray. And of course, I am a music career strategist. My biggest passion is helping creatives navigate the environment and create a strategy, understanding what they're doing, what's working, what's not working, and trying to bring everything full circle. So that is who I am. So let's go into some fun so before we go into fun facts, this these are some people that I've worked with. So we have Albie Shore here, Barry White. I was actually the only female keyboardist to tour with Barry White. Of course, Macy's there. I've done some work with Sid from the internet, the Cranberries, Sonny War, who's a very talented artist, Bryce Vine, who's a really great artist also. And there's a little family picture there of Eddie Murphy and his family because I taught piano to all of his kids except the new ones. He's got two little ones now. Music. After I left Berklee, I went back to New York, stayed there, started working in a lot of different bands there, gained a lot of experience. And what I wanted as a musician was not in New York. And I really wasn't happy with that environment. So I knew that I had to make a radical shift. And that is how I ended up in Hollywood, driving across country with my little car. I had a little Honda Prelude SI with stick, and I had $800. So if you see that, that's all about the Benjamins right here. I had $800 in the bank when I moved to Los Angeles. So, and then also we have our lovely project manager, Tamia, and Tamia is behind the scenes putting everything together for us. So, why I'm doing this is because what I realized, especially during COVID, was there are a ton of musicians out there, as you know, a ton of creatives, but there were things that you don't learn in school. You could have all the schooling in the world. I have a degree from Berklee, which was a top music school, in the world, and I have an MBA also. But with that being said, there are things that you're not going to learn in school and people aren't going to tell you that you're only going to learn them from being a musician, being in the environment. And I realize that a lot of institutions have a very delicate balance because you're their customer. So they have to give good customer service. I don't think it's not that they're not being unrealistic. I think they just don't tell you the full story and sometimes don't direct people where they need to be. So one of my superpowers, of course, is helping clients, my musicians, artists, and creators discover their strengths, weaknesses, and come up with a plan. Not only is having a plan important, but really being mindful of different elements around your plan. For instance, looking at, I call this the pea pod. And with the pea pod, I have, you'll find that I kind of take, I would say, some words sometimes and I just put them in a formula so that they're easy to remember. So your pea pod, we're talking about your persona, your presentation, your passion, and your pitch. So I'll say that again: your persona, your presentation, your passion, and your pitch. So what I mean about that, when I'm saying persona, what kind of personality are you? I have this theory about artists and especially about musicians. A lot of times, the way we play our instrument or the way we perform is really tied in with who we are as people, and it's really tied into our persona, our personality. How are we presenting ourselves? Also, that's really important. Are we very loud? Are we very shy? Are we very clear and concise about what we're doing? And then I look at what is the passion? What is the passion behind what we're doing? Some people aren't as passionate, or maybe they're really passionate inside, but they need to have it come out more. They need to be able to express themselves a lot more. And then this is a really important one. It's the pitch. And I'm not talking about pitch in terms of musical pitch. If someone were to ask you, who are you and what do you do? What would you say? So who here has a pitch, like an elevator pitch? You can just type yes into the chat or no. Like if someone were to ask you, I asked somebody one day, I said, shoot your shot. I'm a big time executive. Yep. Of Kelvin, of course you have a pitch. So what we're going to do, if you don't have a pitch, what we're going to do while I'm talking, I want you guys to work on a pitch. I'm going to give you an example of my pitch, and then I want you to work on your own pitch. And at the end, when we kind of get towards the end, probably about 20, 30 minutes or so, we're going to share our pitches. How's that? Does that sound good? Yay. Okay, so here's my pitch. My name is Charyn Harris. I'm a music industry professional and career strategist. I show musicians and artists how to create a bulletproof career blueprint by leveraging their talent, knowledge, and transferable skills. Okay, that's 2 sentences. It's very clear, it's very concise, it's to the point. So you can, of course, you can get a lot deeper if you're doing a 3-minute pitch, 5-minute pitch, 10-minute pitch. If you have to pitch in front of people, there are different ways that you can draw people into your story. And that's something a little different, but telling a story. But if someone were to ask you what it is that you do, if you were going for a job, how clear you're going to be about executing, articulating your pitch. Okay, really important. So take those notes, and I want to hear those pitches towards the end. So, so that is part of the P-pod. So this brings me to another point, and that's defining your wow. So I call these my building blocks. I have 4 building blocks. So defining your wow, that is the next building block that I think is really important to consider if you're a creative. And defining your wow, you're going to talk about what it is that you do. What it is that you do, right? Your objectives, why you're doing, or your objectives for doing what you do and why you're doing it. And what I mean for this particular building block is if you say, okay, I'm a musician, I'm a keyboardist, I'm a producer, singer, songwriter, that's really great. What are your objectives? How are you tying in your objectives for what you're doing? My objective is I want to share, my music. I want to be famous, that's really great as well. It could be whatever you want it to be. I want to bring joy to people. Why do you do what you do? I do what I do because I was inspired by the love of music. It was prominent in my community. I'm passionate about it, but really giving yourself the time and the space to draw some parameters around what you do. So I think of everything we do as a creative, almost like, you're in a business. This is a business. And being that it is a business, we have to be clear. If somebody came up to you and said, wow, you're really great, I have some money for you to do what you do, how would you explain that? Because chances are they're not going to say, oh, I just like what you do, here's some money. They're going to ask you to write almost like a grant proposal. It's like you have to write a proposal almost. So the clearer you can get about what you do, the better. It's really, and if you're doing it for fun, that's fine. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer, but it's more about you having your personal clarity so you know why you're doing what you're doing and you can kind of explore any feelings around it. And I say that because one thing that I find is that with a lot of creatives, sometimes there's a feeling or emotion attached to what we do. And sometimes those emotions can stop us from doing what we do. I know a lot of creatives that have imposter syndrome where they walk around and they, may say, oh, I'm a musician, I'm a singer, I'm a songwriter. And then you go, great, let me go to your Instagram. And I go on their Instagram and there's absolutely nothing. Absolutely. Well, I'm shy. I'm not ready. There's no such thing as not ready, because the thing about the music industry, it's 20% talent and 80% hustle. 20% talent, 80% hustle. That's it in the nutshell. So I really try to move away from, oh, I'm not ready for this, I'm not ready for that. Because what happens is somebody else who isn't ready either, but is really hungry, is going to step into your place because you're too busy waiting, wishing, trying to figure it out, coulda, woulda, shoulda. You're going to miss shooting your shot. So my whole goal is, if you have a shot to shoot, I want to see you get there. But getting there, getting to that finish line, means that you have got to put some elements in place. So that takes me to my next point, which is strategy. So I have written a book that's, you'll see a little bit about it later. It's called The Art of War for Creatives. And it is based off of the teachings of Sun Tzu. And if you don't know who Sun Tzu was, he was a military strategist. So what I really appreciate about Sun Tzu is that he really paid attention to key points that I think a lot of people don't. And those points are transferable to any creative career. So there are different quotes that we always say, like, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer, right? Because that's a tactic. So in the music industry, you can meet a lot of people who can be your enemies. And not only that, you can be your own enemy. So this is where you have to learn how to dig into your personality a little more, by taking these steps to define and really be clear on who you are in terms of your artistry, how it ties into you. Not only that, thinking about your community, your family, and how that affects your creativity. Being a creative can be very challenging in a lot of families, especially when you're really young, because nobody knows how it works. When I started off as a musician, I started off very innocently because I have very long fingers. So my parents thought it would really be cute if I took piano lessons. They sent me to Mrs. Dixon, who was Reverend Dixon's mom. And she was a fabulous piano teacher. And I had to read the hymnal and read classical music. And she taught me some really incredible technique. She was extremely disciplined. But when it was time for me to go to college, it's not that I loved music all that much, to tell you the truth, but I was good at it and I was disciplined at it. And I didn't know what kind of future I had. And my parents were totally confused because they're not creative people. They wanted me to get a job with benefits. Okay. So they were really upset, of course, when I said I was going to go to Berkeley. But I did it, and they just figured, well, at least she has a degree. She can go on and do whatever else. And I worked during the day, but at night, every chance I got, I was downtown in Manhattan playing in a club. And I was playing every type of music, from wedding bands to bar mitzvahs to, I played in soca. If for those of you who don't know, soca is a Caribbean music. It's soul calypso. I was doing Afrobeat. I was doing pretty much everything, because for me it was more about paying my dues and gaining experience. And not only that, learning how to communicate as a musician, which was something I was not taught in school. Because when you go out into the world, communicating musically is really different, especially if you're a studied musician. When you go and play local clubs, half of the people you work with don't have your credentials. They don't know how to read music. So that's something you have to keep in your pocket, but you also have to kind of turn that switch off and meet everybody where they are. But know that, yes, you have an advantage and you can do some things, but some of those people that, they may not have the education, but they still understand how to put things together in a way that you don't. And so it was really a great experience and very interesting for me to work with a lot of local musicians. And not only that, that was part of how I started building my network, because I was able to work with them and they eventually started referring me to other jobs. And they would go, oh, yeah, call Charyn. I can't do it. Call Charyn. So it also became like a networking tool by working with other musicians. It helped me just to become better at what I did. And what I learned is that I like the challenge and I like learning, and I like learning creatively. So, but what I think I did not have at that point in my life, because I was so young, I didn't have a good understanding of strategy. And strategy is one of the most important elements for any creative. Strategy is looking at your environment, being aware of who is in your environment. And that could be making sure that whoever else is doing what you're doing, how are they doing it? Doing comps. Whenever somebody says, if you ask somebody who is like you and they say, I'm the only one, that's BS. It totally is, because there's always somebody who does what you do. They may do it differently, but you have to know what they're doing and what they are not doing, and figure out how you could fit in, figure out where your space is. So understanding your environment and who's there, and will this work for you? Is this something that's viable for you? Expertise. What kind of expertise are you bringing to the table? I get a lot of tapes to listen to, and a lot of videos. A lot of singers, bands, musicians ask me to critique, and I'm brutally honest, because my thing when it comes to music is that you can't play at it. You really should learn it. And I know there are a lot of people who, it feels good being a musician. It feels good to play, and you're doing it as a hobby. That's totally fine. But I always recommend to invest in yourself. Have a coach. Sit down, and whether you're a vocalist, if you're a vocalist, understand your instrument, because somebody may say, "Oh, girl, you could sing. Oh, wow, you got a great voice." But can you really hold it up? Is it sustainable if you're going into the studio? Do you understand when you're pitchy? I find about 95% of the vocalists that I have worked with are extremely pitchy, because they don't understand placement. They don't understand what their instrument is like. A lot of artists that we hear that have record deals, they cannot sing without auto-tune. And that is an art, to be able to do that. And it actually doesn't take that long if you really study. But I always recommend having somebody who's really good and connecting with a classical musician, a classical vocalist, if you're going to learn vocal technique, who will teach you bel canto, because you'll be able to you'll have the best technique that way. If you're a musician, study with a drum teacher, bass teacher, guitar teacher, keyboardist, whatever. Find somebody that you can work with. There are tons of teachers available online. If you need to know theory, absolutely, for every musician, I don't care what instrument you play, theory is an absolute must. Understand harmony, understand your chords, and understand your scales. I wouldn't say you necessarily have to read music, but understand your bass clef and treble clef. You don't have to be fluent with it. I mean, you don't have to sit down and read a Schubert piece or Beethoven or anything like that. But if you can understand what the 12 notes of a scale are, and you can understand the formulas behind a major minor scale and understand how to spell your chords, that's really critical. And there are a lot of ways that you can do it. And I always say invest in yourself. You're the best investment. So for instance, I used to go to Starbucks. I'm sure if you've gone, you raise your hand, just raise your hand. Everybody's gone to Starbucks, right? I was spending $20 a day in Starbucks. $20 a day. Even if I did that 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month, that's $400. I had to stop. I bought a coffee maker because it became a matter of how I want to spend my money and how I want to invest my money. Because if I'm looking at that, that's how much is that? That's insane. That's really, really insane. You think of $4,800, or maybe sometimes more, during a month. So that's money that I could put towards a teacher, a coach, so think about, if that's ever an issue, how you can just make different choices so you can do what is important to you, because that cup of coffee, that's not that important when it comes to my career. That's the most important thing. Being able to study what I need to and have the tools that I need so I can get ahead with what's important to me. So that brings me to envisioning where you want to go as a creative. Where do you see yourself? When I look at some of these artists, what I see is them attracting what they want. So if you have ever done that in the scope of your career, I'd love for you to just put it in the chat, what you've attracted, if you've envisioned yourself doing something. Just put it in the chat. And so that's envisioning. Also economics. So when I think of economics, I'm thinking of budget, because whatever you're doing, it calls for a budget. Are you budgeting around what you need to improve your game? What kind of lessons, we talked about, what kind of coaching do you need? And even the best of the best always have a coach. Are you doing any marketing around what you're doing? So do you have, is there a cause for any Facebook ads or media or anything like that? So anything like that that you can do to raise your profile? And that's something that, I'll be talking about in future webinars. But there's a lot around economics that's really important, because you want to make sure that you have a budget to do whatever you want to do. So if you're like, okay, it's going to cost me $5,000 a year to take lessons, or whatever it is, it could be $50, or I have $50 or say $100, $250 a month for lessons. How are you going to divide that? You could say I could take lessons every week if that's affordable for you, or you may say I need to take my lessons every other week, right? So creating that budget and understanding what all of your needs are, all of the tools you're going to need. If you're going to do Facebook ads, if you're going to grow your audience organically, you can grow organically. You can do Facebook ads if you have product out, if you want to draw people to you, if you're doing a concert. I mean, what are you doing, and what kind of funds are you putting into that and reinvesting in yourself? But it's really wise to have a budget, whether you're like, I just bought a new microphone, which I absolutely love, because I'm doing podcasts now. And when I listened to my old podcast, the quality was really bad. So it's like, and I know some of you, if you play instruments, I know Kelvin, you can identify with this. If you get a guitar and it's just really not a great guitar, what kind of sound are you going to have? So invest in your career. It's really important that you do that. So after economics, I look at engagement. So engagement, how are you engaging with people? I find that a lot of musicians that I talk to are not really engaging. They're not getting out and making themselves known on social media. They're not talking to people and saying, this is who I am. They're not creating a community around themselves. So creating that community around yourself is really a great thing to do, because you're building your following. Not only are you building your following, but you're also building a focus group, a test market for yourself. So you want to start testing how your product is working, how your music is working. So having that engagement, if you go on and you're doing something live on Instagram and you ask your friends, well, hey, how does this, how do you like this? How do you like my new piece? Or even if you're in a Facebook group, there's some Facebook groups where you can do that as well. And but that's a really great way to start testing your market. Endorsements. So as a musician, musicians get endorsements. Like if you're working with top acts, you're going to get endorsements, more than likely. But another way to get an endorsement is from somebody who's come to see your show. So if you're doing a show, whether it's a virtual show, coffee shop, whatever, you want that feedback and you want somebody to say, wow, that was fantastic. They moved me, they connected. So, engagement and endorsements, how are you connecting with people? Are they your tribe? So, finding your tribe, that's really important that you do that. Effectiveness. How effective are you? So this could be a bit subjective because it depends on what style you're doing. Everybody doesn't do the same thing. Everybody doesn't like the same thing. You don't have to be mainstream in terms of your artistry, but you have to do what's important to you and what you feel. But there is a code of being excellent in terms of how you're doing it and connecting with people, and that is part of your effectiveness. And after effectiveness, I think about being exceptional. So exceptional, it's not only standing out, but making sure you're outstanding, really knowing what you're doing. So really knowing your way around your instrument, really knowing, the technique around it, making sure your tempo is correct, making sure that your intonation is correct. So that's part of being exceptional. And your delivery is clean, it's clear, and you're able to connect with people through your delivery. Also ethics are really important in strategy. Who are you ethically as a creative? So when I work with artists on strategy, one exercise I do is have them do a SWOT analysis. And if you have not done a SWOT analysis, you're looking at your strengths, you're looking at your weaknesses, you're looking at your opportunities, and you're looking at your threats. So what I do is I sit down and I go, okay, let's go through them. And let's not leave anything, any stone unturned, because everybody has strengths. Everybody has weaknesses. Some people don't want to be maybe reminded or honest about their weaknesses. Opportunities, what opportunities are there for you? And what are the threats? I find one of the biggest threats is if you're not reinvesting in yourself. That to me is one of the biggest threats, because that's going to cause instability. It's going to cause low self-esteem, your lack of confidence, and that will lead to imposter syndrome. So you want to make sure that you're doing that you can be really, clear and proud of what you're doing. And then, lastly, my last block is around mindset. And then when I'm looking at mindset, I look at a couple of things. There are these tapes in your head, and there are messages that we feed ourselves, and there are messages that other people have fed us. So, for instance, when you're growing up and people go, oh, you can't do that. Why are you doing this? Some of those messages stay with us, and they're damaging. And it's really difficult when it comes, especially from a figure of authority, especially a family member. because if somebody doesn't understand what you're doing, it may go over their head, and everybody doesn't have the skill set to be as sensitive. And as artists are very, very sensitive, and that's just the way it is. However, we have to learn how to take that sensitivity and really use it to our advantage and not let anything permeate it. So it's really protecting what's very important to you. So how do you protect that? How do you reframe it? How do you reset those messages? Do a little bit of a rewind in your head. So I almost think of it if, I don't know how many of you remember cassette tapes or even like a 2-inch tape, but on cassette tape, you could rewind it. And not only could you rewind it, you could erase that message. So after you erase that message, you have to start replacing it and resetting it with a new message and recording a new message. So when you hear that message that goes, as I used to have a message saying, you can't play one song without making a mistake. And I had to learn how to erase that and how to move past that, because that one message that I heard almost every day, because it came from a figure of authority, really damaged me, and it gave me major anxiety. And I had to learn not only how to erase that message, but how to move past the anxiety. So that's a whole other thing. And, happy to talk to you about that at some point as well.
Hey, everybody. Thanks again for watching. Again, I'm going to go over the 4 key building blocks, Peapod, Define Your Wow, Strategy, and Mindset. This is my upcoming book that is available for pre-sale, and this is where you can find it. If you want to reach out and contact me, here is how you can reach out to me. Keep in touch, and I'll see you really, really soon. Thanks a lot again for watching. Bye now.